Prison Director Vazak II studied the new arrival with 6 of his 8 eyes, while the other 2 tracked the incoming data stream about this peculiar bipedal creature called a human. Humans were a recent addition to the Galactic Confederation. Only 50 years had passed since they mastered faster-than-light travel, and this specimen was the first ever condemned to the Void Fortress, the most secure prison in known space. So, "This is the infamous criminal," said Bazix, his voice a gravelly rumble that echoed through the immaculate intake chamber. "Doesn't look like much." Security Chief Lauren Duzak clicked her mandibles in agreement. "I expected something more intimidating. He's so squishy." The human, Jack Harmon, stood before them with a maddeningly casual smirk. Energy restraints hummed at his wrists and 6 heavily armed Draxian guards ringed him, but he seemed almost amused. "You know I can understand you, right?" he said, raising an eyebrow. His translator implant rendered every word into the Confederation tongues. Bazak blinked his main eyes in sequence, the Navian equivalent of a scoff. "Oh good, it speaks. That will make the 1,000 years more entertaining." "You will be serving 1,000 years, Bazix intoned. Jack whistled. "That seems a bit excessive for smuggling a few artifacts. You stole priceless relics from the sacred temple of Zorbia," Security Chief Duzak said, stepping forward, her exoskeleton making a faint metallic click against the floor. "Relics protected by 73 security measures that you somehow bypassed." Jack shrugged. "I've always liked puzzles." Vazak's tendrils flicked through the prisoner's file with mounting irritation. Good with puzzles. Good with security systems. Proficient with weapons and stealth tech. Apparently his record read, talented at everything except obeying the law. "Everyone needs hobbies," Jack said, that infuriating smile never leaving his face. Vazak leaned forward, all 8 eyes fixed on the human. "Let me make this clear, prisoner 7734. For 1,000 years no one, absolutely no one, has escaped the Void Fortress. This facility is carved into an asteroid that orbits a black hole. The gravitational forces alone would tear apart an unauthorized vessel. The only way in or out is our quantum gate, controlled by genetic authorization from 3 senior staff members." "Cozy," Jack remarked. "Your attitude will change," Vazak replied without a hint of humor. "This prison houses the most dangerous criminals from 27 galaxies. Many would tear a human apart just to watch your strange red blood spill." Jack's smile didn't waver. "I look forward to meeting my neighbors." "You won't have neighbors," Duzak said, letting out a sound that might have been a laugh. "You'll be in Isolation Block D," the Confederation Council insisted. "Given your skills, but I'm so social," Jack protested, mock disappointment dripping from his voice. Vazak ignored him and turned to the guards. "Take prisoner 7734 to decontamination, then to his cell. Full security protocols. And human," he added, cold as the void beyond their walls. "That smirk will be gone within a week." "They all break eventually," Jack winked. "Challenge accepted." 3 months later, Vazak's confidence had frayed. The human hadn't broken. If anything, prisoner 7734 seemed to be flourishing. Vazak slammed an appendage down on the conference table. "How is this possible? He's been in isolation for 90 days. Most species hallucinate from sensory deprivation within 30. Medical Officer Pelazar consulted her datapad. "Humans show remarkable psychological resilience," she said. "They sustain themselves through internal stimulation, what they call imagination. This one spends hours speaking to himself, constructing elaborate scenarios, even laughing at his own jokes." "That's disturbing," Duzak muttered. "Can we increase the isolation effects?" "We're already using every known technique," Pelazar replied. "Sound dampening, chronometric disruption, variable lighting to disturb sleep patterns, temperature regulation. Nothing has a significant effect." Vazak rubbed his eye talks in frustration. "What about the other prisoners? Any incidents?" "That's the other problem," Duzak said, mandibles clicking. "Despite his seclusion, he's managed to communicate with inmates in adjacent blocks. During exercise, several high-risk prisoners showed him respect. Nods, salutes, species-specific gestures. An Adian warlord who hasn't spoken in 30 years actually called out a salute to the human across the yard." Vazak's skin paled. How is he communicating? "Hidden tech? We performed 17 full cell searches, 3 body scans, and continuous monitoring," Duzak answered. "He has nothing." When questioned, the audience said the human helped him remember his son's face. "Impossible." They've never been within 20 meters of each other. Pelazar cleared her throat. There's more. The human's physique hasn't deteriorated under isolation. He performs what he calls exercises, repetitive movements, and his strength has increased since arrival. This is unacceptable, Vazak hissed. Move him to maximum security block A. Put him with the worst of the worst. Let's see how his imagination stands up surrounded by those who committed genocide. Vazak should have known better. 2 months after the transfer, Jack Harmon had become the unofficial leader of Maximum Security A. Fights decreased by 60%. The meal hall, once a daily bloodbath, had grown almost civilized. Vazak watched security feeds showing Jack at a table surrounded by an improbable assortment of killers. A hulking Krell brute, 2 synth assassins, a Vessian mind flayer, even a Morgoth shadow walker. They listened as if spellbound. He's telling them stories, Duzak said, bewildered. Human folklore, Earth history, things called movies, they're enthralled. It's more than storytelling, Assistant Warden Grigstow added. He mediates disputes. The Krell and the Synths, enemies for generations, sat together without bloodshed. Yesterday he talked a Hexton berserker down after a rage episode. How? Vazak nearly shouted. How is one puny human doing this? They respect him, Duzak said simply. The screen flashed a report. A Droran had tried to establish dominance by attacking Jack in the shower facility. According to the footage, Jack disabled the Droran not by killing it, impossible for a human against those armored scales and toxic spines, but by exploiting joint vulnerabilities and using the creature's own weight to subdue it. Then, instead of finishing the Droran as custom demanded, Jack helped it to its feet and treated its wounds. The Droran now followed him everywhere like a loyal pet. Vazak stared at the feed in disbelief. On the screen, Jack made broad, expressive gestures while speaking, and the assembled inmates emitted sounds the Confederation translated as laughter. Duzak peered at the log. He's teaching them a human game, poker. A game of strategy and deception. Vazak's skin darkened with anger. Deception and strategy. These were precisely the skills the Confederation feared most in its most dangerous criminals. Should we put him back in isolation? Tauber asked. Vazak considered the options. Isolation had failed, and uprooting him now would risk igniting unrest among the inmates who had rallied around him. We watch him, he decided. We catalog every interaction. We find his weakness. Every species has one. Months later, the weakness Vazak II had been waiting for didn't need to be found. It came to him. Director, we've received an incoming transmission. From Earth, announced Communications Officer Mix, Plav. It's marked urgent and personal, addressed to prisoner, 7734. Vazak's interest peaked immediately. The first contact attempt since his incarceration, he murmured. Screen it thoroughly, then bring it to my office. An hour later, Vazak sat in silence, watching the recorded message flicker to life. The face of a human woman appeared, similar in features to the prisoner. The translation software identified her as Lena Harmon. Jack, I don't know if this will reach you, she said, her voice trembling as tears streaked her cheeks. The strange human way of showing grief. The Confederation won't tell me where you are. They only confirmed you're alive, somewhere called the Void Fortress. I've spent everything I have trying to find you, trying to appeal your case. She paused, wiping her tears. Mom didn't make it, Jack. The treatments failed. She held on as long as she could, hoping you'd come home. She made me promise to tell you she understood why you did it, why you took those artifacts. The money would have saved her. Vazak felt his primary heart pulse faster. There it is, he thought. The missing piece of the puzzle. Lena continued softly. I'm still fighting for you, Jack, but I need to know you're okay. If you can send a message back, please. Just let me know you're alive. The recording ended. Vazak leaned back in his suspension chair, his mind racing. The human's crime suddenly made sense. It wasn't greed or thrill-seeking. He had acted out of desperation, trying to save his mother. Compassion, a weakness common to countless species. And now Vazak realized it could be used. Shall we deliver the message to the prisoner? Asked Security Chief Duzak. Not yet, Vazak replied coldly. First, I want a full psychological update. I need to know how this information might influence his behavior. Could it make him reckless, perhaps even push him toward escape? Duzak hesitated. No one escapes the Void Fortress, Director. No one has yet. Vazak corrected. But no one like this human has ever been imprisoned here either. Jack Harmon knew something was wrong the moment he stepped into the visitation chamber. For one, he'd never been granted a visitor before, not in 9 months. For another, Director Vazak himself was present, flanked by double the usual guard detail. Jack Harmon knew something was wrong the moment he stepped into the visitation chamber. For one, he'd never been granted a visitor before, not in 9 months. For another, Director Vazak himself was present, flanked by double the usual guard detail. Special occasion? Jack asked, lowering himself into the sterile white chair. Don't tell me you're throwing me a surprise party. Vazak didn't rise to the bait. Instead, he tapped a control on the table, and a small holographic display shimmered to life. You've received a message from Earth. Jack's grin disappeared instantly. Every trace of amusement faded, replaced by a fierce, focused intensity that made even the guard stiffen. Play it, he said flatly. Information is valuable in prison, Vazak replied evenly. What will you offer in exchange? Jack's eyes narrowed. You're withholding a personal message. That's a violation of Confederation Detention Code, Section 47. Vazak arched a brow. You've been studying our laws? I've had time to read, Jack said coolly. Now, play the message. Something in his voice made Vazak reconsider. He activated the recording. Jack didn't move as his sister's face appeared before him, her words carrying across the sterile chamber. He didn't flinch at the mention of their mother's death, nor when Lena's voice cracked from grief. When the message ended, he sat silently for nearly a minute, eyes distant and unreadable. I want to send a reply, he said finally. That can be arranged, Vazak said carefully, though all communications are monitored and censored as required. Fine, I just want her to know I'm alive. Vazak studied him. Your file never mentioned your motive for the theft. This changes things. It helps us understand you better. Jack's gaze turned cold. Does it bring my mother back? Reduce my sentence? No, Vazak admitted, but it might make your time here easier. Cooperation has benefits. Jack leaned back, watching him carefully. What kind of cooperation? You have influence among the inmates, Vazak said. Perhaps you could serve as a liaison between the administration and prisoners. Help maintain order. Jack let out a laugh, sharp and humorless. You want me to be your spy? Report trouble before it happens. I want stability, Vazak corrected. In return, better rations, access to Earth literature, entertainment, perhaps reduced isolation. Jack tilted his head thoughtfully. And regular communication with my sister? Within reason, Vazak said. Jack nodded slowly. I'll think about it. As the guards escorted Jack away, Duzak approached the director. Do you believe he'll cooperate? No, Vazak said after a moment. But now we know what drives him. That connection to his sister. It gives him something to lose. And that makes him predictable. He was wrong. 3 weeks later, alarms screamed through the void fortress. Red lights pulsed across level 7 as Vazak rushed into the control center. What's happening? He demanded. System-wide failure in maximum security, Block A, shouted a technician. Doors, environmental controls, surveillance all malfunctioning. Vazak's blood ran cold. Where's prisoner 7734? Still in his cell, Duzak replied quickly. At least according to the last update 7 minutes before the blackout. Lock down the entire level. Vazak barked. No one moves until systems are restored. We can't, another technician shouted. Quantum gate controls for level 7 are offline. We've lost all remote access. That's impossible. Vazak snapped. Those systems are isolated specifically to... An alert interrupted him. The main display shifted to show a live feed from the central atrium. It should have been empty. Instead, 24 inmates were moving in formation. At their center stood Jack Harmon. How many? Vazak whispered. 23, Duzak confirmed. Including the Krell brute, both synth assassins and the Drawren. Where are they headed? Toward the administration level, she said grimly. Specifically, the communications hub. Vazak's realization hit like a shockwave. He wants to send a message to his sister. Deploy the riot suppression unit. He roared. All guards to the communications hub. Lethal force authorized. Director? Medical Officer Zern interjected, horrified. The Confederation forbids lethal force. This is the exception, Vazak snapped. If they breach that hub, they could override the entire fortress. On the screen, the inmates met the first wave of guards. But instead of the bloodbath everyone expected, Jack stepped forward with his hands raised. The guards hesitated, weapons trained. "Activate audio," Vazak ordered. Jack's voice came through the speakers, steady, calm, commanding. "No one needs to die. We just want to send one message. Then we'll return to our cells." "Return immediately," the guard captain barked. "Listen," Jack continued evenly. "Your reinforcements are 3 minutes out. That gives us 2 options. 1, we fight. Some of us will make it through and people on both sides will die. Or 2, you let me send one message supervised and this ends peacefully." The guards hesitated. The Krell flexed its massive arms. The synth assassins shifted silently behind Jack. Finally, the captain said, "One message, supervised. Then everyone returns to lockdown." Jack nodded. "You have my word." Vazak slammed his appendage against the console. "Override that order. They cannot be allowed access to communications." But the feed showed it was already too late. Jack Harmon was being escorted toward the communications hub. The atmosphere inside the communications chamber was tense. Vazak II and his officers watched from behind reinforced glass as Jack Harmon was escorted in, surrounded by guards. Outside, the other inmates waited under heavy watch. "What's he doing?" demanded Vizik, her voice sharp with suspicion. "The technician says he's sending a message. Text only," replied Duzak. "Destination, Earth. Addressed to his sister." "Read it," Vazak ordered. The technician hesitated, then brought the transmission up on the screen. Message reads, "Alana, I'm alive. Prison conditions tolerable. Don't waste resources trying to appeal my case. Focus on your life. I'll find my way back. Love, Jack." That's all. Vizik stared at the screen in disbelief. He orchestrated a riot for that? A simple letter? "Wait," said the technician, frowning. "There's something odd. The message isn't following a direct route. It's bouncing between 17 different relay stations before reaching Earth. It's like he's hiding something inside the transmission." Vazak's expression hardened. "Run a full-spectrum analysis. Check for embedded data, quantum encryption, hidden frequencies, everything." On the security feed, Jack finished sending his message and was escorted out, signaling to the others to stand down. True to his word, the inmates began filing back toward their cell blocks, leaving the guards visibly unsettled. "The analysis will take time," the technician said nervously. "The routing pattern is incredibly complex." "Time," Vazak muttered grimly, "is something we may not have. Move him to solitary confinement, maximum security. No contact with anyone, and find out how he managed to override our systems." As the prisoners were locked away without incident, a cold unease settled over the control room. Something about the human's calm obedience didn't feel right. "How did he even know where the communications hub was?" Duzak asked quietly. "That location isn't public knowledge, not even to staff below level 5 clearance." Vazak had no answer. The thought alone sent an icy shiver down his spine columns. 3 days later, Vazak was jolted awake by the blaring of emergency alarms. He slammed his communicator open to find the wide-eyed face of the night supervisor, Jix Ko. "Director, we have a situation," Ko said, panic lacing his voice. "Multiple system failures across all levels." "The human again?" Vazak asked, though he already knew the answer. "No, sir. Prisoner 70734 is still in solitary under constant surveillance. This is different." "Explain," Vazak demanded, pulling on his uniform as he strode out of his quarters. "It started small," Ko said. "Power fluctuations. Gravity shifts. Now critical systems are failing. The quantum gate stabilizers are showing signs of misalignment." For the first time in decades, true fear flickered through Vazak's eyes. "The gate can't be compromised. If it destabilizes, the entire facility gets dragged into the black hole," Ko finished grimly. "Engineering's working on it, but they can't identify the cause." "I'm on my way," Vazak said, already sprinting down the corridor. By the time he reached the main control center half an hour later, the situation had deteriorated beyond comprehension. Red emergency lights painted the room in an ominous glow. Technicians shouted over one another, data streams flickering erratically across the walls. "Status!" Vazak barked. "Critical!" shouted Chief Engineer Trolin. "The quantum gate's containment field is destabilizing. Power surges are spreading through the station. Environmental systems in sectors 3 through 7 have failed. Cause unknown. It's like the central computer is fighting itself. Commands are being issued and countermanded at the same time. Could it be an external attack? Fazak asked. Impossible, Duzak said, arriving beside him. Our position is shielded by the black hole's radiation. No signal could even find us, much less breach the perimeter. Fazak froze as a thought struck him. The human's message. Is the analysis complete? Duzak's mandibles clicked anxiously. Preliminary scans found nothing unusual. The full spectrum analysis is still. Her words were drowned out by a deafening alarm. The main screen flashed bright crimson. Quantum gate destabilization imminent, evacuation protocols initiated. Fazak stared at the alert in horror. This prison has stood for 1,000 years. It's never been evacuated. We have no choice, Trollin said firmly. If the gate collapses, the entire asteroid will be swallowed by the event horizon. Automated announcements began echoing through the corridors as emergency pods were activated. The evacuation of over 10,000 staff and prisoners had begun. What about the inmates? Duzak asked. Standard protocol, Fazak said grimly. Staff first, low-risk prisoners second. Maximum security inmates remain behind. They'll die, Duzak said flatly, without much sympathy. The Confederation Council decided long ago, Fazak replied coldly. Containment over compassion. As chaos erupted around them, Fazak made a decision. Bring me prisoner 70734 now, maximum restraints. I want to see him before we evacuate. Sir, we don't have time, Duzak began. Make time, Fazak snapped. He knows something. 20 minutes later, Jack Harmon sat calmly across from the director, bound by energy restraints. Even as the room shook and alarms blared, he looked entirely composed. Quite the excitement for a Monday, he said casually. Or is it Tuesday? Hard to tell in solitary. Enough games, Fazak said, his tone deadly. Did you do this? Jack raised an eyebrow. Do what exactly? The quantum gate is collapsing. The entire station is on the verge of destruction. Somehow you're responsible. Jack leaned back slightly, a small smile tugging at his lips. That's a bold accusation. How could one human possibly interfere with systems he's never had access to, especially while locked away in isolation? The message you sent, Fazak growled. What was hidden in it? Jack's expression softened almost fondly. Just a note to my sister, letting her know I'm alive. Family's important to humans, you know. Before Fazak could respond, a violent tremor rocked the office. Consoles crashed to the floor, lights flickered, and the low roar of structural collapse echoed through the station. We're evacuating, Fazak said, his voice tense. All staff, essential prisoners, but not maximum security, Jack interrupted, finishing the thought. So we get front row seats to watch the place fall into a black hole. Charming policy. Another, stronger tremor shook the floor beneath them, and Fazak realized, too late, that the human wasn't afraid. He was waiting for this. Fazak received an urgent ping through his neural link. Director, evacuation pods are launching. You're required at the command pod immediately. He turned toward the human, his voice low and venomous. You won't escape this, Harmon. Whatever you planned, whatever chaos you've unleashed, it ends here. The Void Fortress has caged the worst monsters in galactic history. It will contain you, even in its final moments. Jack leaned forward against his restraints, which crackled as they tightened automatically. His voice, calm but cutting, carried through the dim light. You know what sets humans apart from the rest of your Confederation, Director? It's not our strength or our science or even our intelligence. It's that we don't believe in impossible. Where others see a wall, we see a puzzle waiting to be solved. The lights went out. For a heartbeat, there was only darkness, and when the emergency systems flickered back on, Fazak found himself staring at empty restraints. The human was gone. The door to the office stood open, alarm screaming down the corridor. Computer, Fazak barked, rushing to the console. Locate prisoner 7734. The screen flashed red. Error. Prisoner database corrupted. Unable to locate specified individual. Before Fazak could react, another message came through his neural link. Final evacuation warning. All remaining personnel report to emergency pods immediately. He hesitated. Duty warring against self-preservation. Then with a growl, he turned and ran. The corridors were collapsing into chaos. Sparks rained from shattered conduits. Smoke filled the air, and sections of the hallway had lost gravity entirely. Staff members and debris floated helplessly through the failing corridors. When Vazak finally reached the command evacuation bay, Security Chief Duzak was already there, her mandibles clicking in agitation. "Director,
We must launch now."
the human escaped his restraints," Vazak said sharply as he sealed the pod's hatch. "He's loose on the station." "It doesn't matter," Duzak snapped. "In 20 minutes, this entire facility will be cosmic dust." The pod launched, joining dozens of others streaming away from the dying fortress. Through the viewport, Vazak watched his life's work, the most secure prison in the known galaxy, shrink against the glow of the black hole's accretion disk. Then, out of the darkness, a flash. A small craft had detached from the prison's underside, an escape vessel no one knew existed. It burst to life, its engines burning white-hot as it accelerated away. "Impossible," Vazak whispered. There were no ships docked. Every vessel was accounted for, but the evidence was right before his eyes. The mysterious craft executed a series of gravitational slingshot maneuvers that should have torn it apart, using the black hole's pull to hurl itself clear of danger. "Track that vessel," he ordered. The pod's limited sensors struggled to keep up, but the ship was already vanishing into the void. Based on its trajectory, the navigator reported, "It's heading toward the outer rim. Coordinates align with the uninhabited system near the Earth colony of New Darwin." Vazak slumped back, his eyes fixed on the fading speck. Duzak turned to him cautiously. "Director, what does it mean?" He exhaled slowly, his skin paling to the color of defeat. "It means, Security Chief, that after 1,000 years someone has escaped from the Void Fortress. Behind them, the massive prison broke apart, its remains spiraling into the black hole's hungry maw. And somewhere out there, a human named Jack Harmon was going home." Hours later, the evacuation fleet limped toward Confederation Space Station Proxys 9, carrying the surviving staff. Inside the command pod, Director Vazak sat motionless, his eyes fixed on the data streaming across his console. "Sir," Duzak began hesitantly, "the High Council has requested your immediate report." Vazak didn't look up. "And what should I tell them, Security Chief?" "That a single human destroyed the most secure facility in the galaxy. That a millennium of perfect containment ended because we underestimated a primitive world." "The facts aren't yet clear," Duzak replied carefully. "It could have been a coincidence, a catastrophic malfunction, nothing to do with him." Vazak finally turned toward her, his skin mottled with the colors of stress. "Do you believe that?" Duzak hesitated. "No, I don't. Neither does the Council," he said flatly. "They're sending Inquisitor General Vusk Norn to meet us at Proxys 9. My 4 centuries of service end today. Chief, you'd best prepare for yours to follow. With respect." "Director, that seems premature, does it?" he snapped. "The human escaped. He arranged a ship that shouldn't exist, timed perfectly with the collapse of our systems. Nothing like this has ever happened in Confederation history." Duzak said nothing. The silence between them was heavy, broken only by the faint hum of the pod's engines. Vazak continued scrolling through the data. The analysis of his message to Earth finally completed. "Do you know what they found?" "What? Nothing. No hidden code, no anomaly, no trace of interference." "Then perhaps it wasn't the message," Duzak said. "Maybe something else." "What else could it be?" Vazak barked. He was in isolation, under surveillance, with no access to tech or contact with anyone. The message was the only thing that left the station. Before she could answer, a soft alert tone interrupted them. "Director," called the communications officer, "we're receiving an incoming transmission." "It's unusual." "How so?" "It's directed specifically to you, sir. No identifiable origin, no registered signature." Vazak's hearts froze. "Patch it through." The screen flickered, and then impossibly Jack Harmon's face appeared. Calm, smiling. "Hello, Director," he said, that familiar, infuriating smirk curling his lips. "Thought you might appreciate some closure?" Vazak stared. "How are you transmitting to this vessel?" "Our location is classified." Jack chuckled. "Oh, Vazak, you still don't understand, do you? Let me clarify. Think of this as one professional addressing another." "You're not a professional," Vazak hissed. "You're a criminal. The most dangerous we've ever held." Jack's smirk faded, his tone turning cold. "No, Director. I was never a prisoner." "Not really. What are you saying?" "The artifacts I took from Zorbia? That wasn't theft, it was a mission. Authorized by the highest levels of Earth's government. Impossible. The council sentenced you. There was a trial, evidence, all part of the cover, Jack interrupted. Earth's been worried about the Void Fortress for years. A prison so secret even your auditors didn't understand its systems. That's not justice, Director. That's tyranny. You were sent to investigate us? Fazak asked, disbelief creeping into his voice. Exactly, Jack said. To confirm the rumors that your fortress wasn't just holding murderers and warlords but dissidents. People who spoke against the Confederation. People you wanted to disappear. Fazak's skin paled. These are dangerous claims. They're facts, Jack replied evenly. And the data I gathered during my stay proves it. You had no access to our systems, Fazak protested. Jack leaned forward slightly, that maddening calm never leaving him. Why do you think I wanted transfer to maximum security Block A? Why do you think I befriended the other inmates? Realization dawned on Fazak's face. They had information, Jack said softly. The Vessian mind flare, for example. Brilliant creature. Imprisoned for exposing corruption in your own council. He'd been collecting evidence for decades, but he had no way to send it out. Until me, but how? Fazak demanded. Your message contained nothing. The message wasn't important, Jack said. The root was. Those 17 relay stations each received fragments of encrypted data, hidden within the quantum signature of my transmission. Data proving every illegal detention, every abuse, every violation the Void Fortress has ever buried. Fazak's tendrils went cold. Who did you send it to? Jack smiled faintly. Everyone. Media networks. Human rights groups. Opposition leaders. Even a few council members who still have a conscience. The quantum gate failure, was that you too? Jack shook his head. No, that was fate, or perhaps a few nervous politicians cleaning up the evidence. I simply provided the spark. Fazak slumped in his chair, defeated. And the ship? How did you... Earth's doing, Jack said simply. A stealth prototype disguised as debris in your asteroid field. Been waiting 6 months for my signal. Fazak's voice dropped to a whisper. And your mother? Was she part of the deception too? For the first time, Jack's expression hardened. No, Director. My mother was real, and she died while I was in your prison. That was the one part of my story that wasn't a lie. The transmission flickered. Jack gave a final, almost pitying smile. Goodbye, Director, and remember, no prison lasts forever. Then the screen went black. Zik sat in silence, his mind struggling to process everything he had just heard. Finally, he managed to speak. Why are you telling me this, Harmon? Why not simply vanish and let the Confederation believe you're dead? Jack's expression softened, the faintest smile tugging at his lips. Professional courtesy, Director. And because you deserve to know the truth. The Void Fortress's perfect record still stands. Technically. Zik frowned. Explain. Jack leaned forward, his voice calm but edged with irony. I was never officially listed as a prisoner. My incarceration was off the books in a covert mission. So in the records, no prisoner has ever escaped your precious fortress. The Confederation's spotless legacy remains intact. He gave one final smirk. You've just never had a human inside before. The transmission cut to black, leaving Zik staring at the blank display, his reflection distorted in the dying glow. Security Chief Dozak, who had overheard the exchange, stepped closer, her mandibles twitching with unease. Director, what did he mean by that? Zik turned to her, his skin fading to the dull gray of resignation. It means, Chief, we were never the wardens. We were the experiment. Inquisitor General Vusk Norris was nothing like Zik had expected. Instead of a towering, multi-limbed enforcer, the investigator was a diminutive Kalan, barely a meter tall with shimmering scales and enormous, liquid black eyes that seemed to drink in the light around them. Director Tural, Norris greeted in a voice that resonated far deeper than his small frame suggested. Your record is exceptional. Which makes recent events puzzling. They sat alone in a stark debriefing room aboard Proxus 9. No aides, no recordings. Just the two of them. This was how careers ended quietly in the Confederation. Inquisitor, Zik began carefully. The situation with the human operative was unprecedented. So I've gathered, Norris replied, consulting his datapad. Your preliminary report attributes the destruction of the Void Fortress to sabotage. Yet you've presented no evidence. The timing, Inquisitor. The system failure occurred precisely as the human escaped. Former human, Norris interrupted smoothly. According to official records, prisoner 7734 perished with the rest of the maximum security inmates. The data is quite clear. Vizik's pulse quickened. That's impossible. I saw the ship with my own eyes and it escaped the blast radius. Norris looked up, unblinking. No such vessel appears in any record. The evacuation logs account for every pod. None match your description. The realization hit Vizik like ice. This wasn't an investigation, it was a burial. Inquisitor, he said slowly. Are you suggesting my report is inaccurate? Norris's scales rippled faintly, a sign of amusement. I'm suggesting that malfunctions happen, Director. The fortress was ancient, a tragic systems failure, nothing more. The human was an unfortunate casualty, along with the other inmates. Vizik's voice hardened. And the allegations? The claims that the fortress held political prisoners? Norris's large eyes narrowed slightly. What allegations, Director? The human contacted me during the evacuation, Vizik admitted. He claimed to have uncovered evidence of illegal detentions, people imprisoned without trial. Fascinating, Norris said flatly, his tone now colder. And you believe the ravings of a convicted criminal attempting to justify his crimes? I'm simply reporting what was said. Of course, Norris replied with a thin smile. But those remarks will not appear in your final report. The Council prefers clarity. Mentioning such falsehoods would only create confusion. Vizik understood. The truth had already been decided. The Void Fortress had suffered a catastrophic systems failure. No one had escaped. No crimes had been committed. End of story. I understand, Inquisitor, he said quietly. Excellent. Norris closed his datapad with a crisp snap. Now about your next assignment, Vizik blinked. Assignment? You're not terminating my service? Why would we waste an experienced officer? Norris replied, feigning surprise. You'll be reassigned to a rehabilitation colony, Borix 4. A peaceful posting, minimum security, no dangerous inmates. A good place to reflect. Vizik felt the weight of the demotion settle over him like a shroud. And if I refuse? Norris's scales flashed crimson. That would be unwise, Director. Very unwise indeed, Vizik bowed his head. Then I accept. With gratitude. Splendid, Norris said, rising. You will report within 30 cycles. And, Director, our conversation regarding the human's allegations is classified at the highest level. For your protection. When the Inquisitor left, Vizik remained seated in silence, his mind spinning. The Confederation was burying everything, and the truth, the records, even him. But why? Were Jack Harmon's claims true? Was the fortress really used to silence political dissidents? And what of the data Harmon said he'd released? If it had truly been broadcast across 50 systems, why was there no public outrage? Unless those outlets had been silenced too. For the first time in his long career, Director Vizik Tural began to doubt the system he had devoted his life to. 3 months later, on the remote human colony of New Darwin, Jack Harmon sat on the porch of a modest dwelling overlooking a landscape of twin suns, jagged peaks, and lush green valleys. The colony was far from the centers of power, human or alien, and that was precisely why he'd chosen it. Elena Harmon, his sister, stepped outside carrying 2 steaming mugs of tea. Here, she said, handing him one. Jack smiled faintly. Thanks. Any word from Brunick? The usual bureaucratic delays, Elena sighed. But she's confident the evidence will force an inquiry eventually. These things take time. Time is the one thing that people still in those prisons don't have, Jack muttered. Every day the Confederation hides what happened at the fortress is another day they suffer. The truth will come out, Elena said firmly. Ambassador Brandzik and his allies are building a case, quietly but effectively. Jack nodded, though his eyes remained distant. And the others? Rex and Zola reached the synth homeworld safely. The Droran Torque made it to the sanctuary moon. The rest are scattered but safe. All 22 accounted for. Jack exhaled slowly, his expression softening. Good, they deserved better than that place. Better than what the Confederation gave them. Elena reached into her coat, pulling out a small metallic data crystal. Speaking of which, Elena reached into her pocket and produced a small, glimmering data crystal. This came through the secure channel today from Director Toril. Jack straightened instantly, surprise flashing across his face. Vebjik, what does he want? See for yourself. She handed him the crystal. It's authenticated, definitely from him. Jack slid the crystal into his personal tablet. A message appeared, written in the unmistakable encryption style of high-level Confederation officials. Harmon, I don't know if this will reach you. The official record lists you as deceased, killed when the fortress was destroyed. I've been reassigned to a minor post on Borax 4, a quiet exile. Not as severe a punishment as I expected, though perhaps more humiliating. The Confederation has suppressed every trace of your accusations. No news outlets report it. Rights organizations deny any knowledge. Whatever evidence you sent either never arrived or has been buried deep. I now find myself questioning everything I believed in for nearly 5 centuries. If what you claimed is true, then my entire career served an illusion of justice. I have few resources left, but what remains is yours. If your mission was genuine, my contact details are encoded within this transmission. Whether we become enemies or reluctant allies remains to be seen. Securial Jack read the message twice before looking up. They intercepted the data packets. Every single one. Elena frowned. Impossible. The encryption was military grade, untraceable. Jack shook his head. Nothing's untraceable when you control the entire network. They must have been monitoring all 17 relay stations. They knew exactly what to look for. Then we failed, Elena said softly. Everything. The imprisonment, the intel gathering, the escape. It was all for nothing. Jack stared at the tablet for a long moment, then smiled faintly. No, not for nothing. Elena raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? We have Zikaral now. A high-ranking Confederation official with centuries of experience and access to internal systems. Someone on the inside is questioning the regime. You really think you can trust him? She asked skeptically. After he kept you locked in isolation for months? He was doing his job, Jack replied. Just like I was doing mine, but now he might be ready to do something right. So what's our next move? Jack stepped out onto the porch, watching as the lights of the human settlement shimmered across the valley. Hundreds of families building new lives on a new world. Lives that could be shattered if the Confederation's tyranny remained unchallenged. We go back to basics, he said. The old-fashioned way, meaning evidence that can't be intercepted or erased. Physical documents, witnesses, testimonies, proof that survives deletion. That won't be easy, Elena warned. The Confederation will be watching for any irregular activity. Jack's expression hardened. Then we'll just have to be creative, starting with our new friend, Director Toril. You're going to respond to him? Better, Jack said, smiling. I'm going to recruit him. For what? He turned toward her. Project Daylight. Project Daylight? A joint operation between Earth intelligence and our allies inside the Confederation, he explained. Its mission: expose every illegal detention center, every political prisoner, every hidden atrocity, and free those unjustly imprisoned. Elena studied her brother's face. This is more than your original mission, isn't it? This is personal now. It became personal the moment I saw what they'd done, Jack said quietly. I met scientists, philosophers, teachers, people locked away for centuries simply because they dared to question authority. The Confederation calls them traitors. I call them victims of a corrupt system. He gazed toward the fading horizon, the last sliver of sunlight vanishing behind the hills. The Void Fortress was only the beginning. There are dozens more like it, hidden, unacknowledged, filled with people who deserve justice. Elena folded her arms. And you think one human and one disgraced prison director can topple a system that's lasted thousands of years? Jack's familiar grin returned, the same defiant expression that had infuriated his captors. They made one critical mistake, sister dearest. Oh? And what's that? They've never really dealt with humans before. He held up the tablet, rereading the final line of Zikaral's message. They think they understand us, but they don't. Where they see limits, we see opportunities. Where they build walls, we find doors. And most importantly, they underestimate just how stubborn we are when we know we're right. Jack began typing his reply. Swift, precise, resolute. One prison director, one human operative, 22 former inmates with nothing left to lose. It's a start. Elena watched him work, torn between pride and fear. The Confederation won't know what hit them. No, Jack murmured. They won't, and that's exactly the point. As stars began to pierce the twilight sky over New Darwin, Jack sent his message. It was the first spark of what would soon become a galaxy-wide network of resistance, the first step toward unveiling 1,000 years of buried crimes. The Void Fortress had fallen. Others would follow. Because the Confederation had made one fatal error, they had imprisoned a human, and humans, as history would soon remind the galaxy, never stayed locked up for long. 6 months later, a nondescript transport ship descended toward Borix IV. Inside, Vizikaral adjusted his plain civilian clothes, so unfamiliar after centuries in the crisp uniform of a Confederation officer. Approaching final descent, the ship's computer intoned. He checked his forged identification one last time. Vzek Maru, agricultural merchant. The genetic masking and falsified biometrics would pass standard scans, he hoped. If not, his fate would be worse than death. Treason was punished by memory extraction and consciousness imprisonment. And yet, here he was, risking everything for a cause he once dismissed as madness. The data Jack Harmon had sent him 3 months earlier had left no room for denial. Tribunal transcripts rewritten, orders falsified, political opponents disappeared by council decree. It was systemic corruption at the highest levels. As the transport touched down, Vizikaral steadied himself. The meeting was set for 3 hours later at a remote maintenance outpost outside the colony, Jack's chosen rendezvous point. The human had promised new resources, equipment, and most importantly, a way off-world undetected. The risk was enormous. The consequences catastrophic. But for the first time in his centuries of service, Vizikaral wasn't following orders. He was following conscience. As he stepped into the bustling terminal, blending into the crowd, a thought struck him, one he would never have dared before. Perhaps humans weren't the reckless, volatile species the Confederation feared. Perhaps their refusal to accept control, their defiance, their relentless pursuit of truth, wasn't a flaw. Perhaps it was what the galaxy needed most. He adjusted his shoulder pack and walked toward the colony gates, toward his meeting with Jack Harmon, toward an uncertain but necessary future. For 1,000 years, the Confederation had ruled through fear and silence. But the moment they locked up a human, they sealed their own fate, because nothing in the galaxy could contain humanity forever.